Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Don from 1A Auto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And the next time you need a part for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a rear wheel bearing or hub assembly on this 2007 Pontiac G6. Pretty much the same for any 2005 to 2010 G6, as well as the same year Saturn Aura. Our vehicle does not have ABS brakes, so the only difference is there's just a connector to disconnect on the back of the hub. You'll need a new hub assembly from 1AAuto.com, jack and jack stands, 14, 15, and 19 millimeter sockets. You'll need a ratchet with an extension and a flexible joint, large screwdriver, a hammer, a wire brush, and a torque wrench. Start by using a 19 millimeter socket, and depending on what wheels you have, this has wheel covers, so you unscrew the caps and then the wheel cover comes off. If you don't have the benefit of air tools, you'll want to loosen the lug nuts with the vehicle on the ground, then raise and secure the vehicle, and then remove the lug nuts, wheel and tire. And holding the caliper is two 14 millimeter bolts. And we'll speed up here. We use a 14 millimeter wrench on the bolt, and then you actually have to hold the slides with either a 19 millimeter or a 13/16 wrench. Now use a large screwdriver or small pry bar and just pry between the caliper and the disc, and that'll help loosen the caliper up a little bit. Now you can lift the caliper off. Now the pads will pull out. The inside pad, or maybe even the outside pad, you might want to use a screwdriver, a little extra leverage, put it in between the pad and the rotor, and just pry it right out. Two 13 millimeter bolts hold the bracket. And we'll speed up here as we use a 13 millimeter socket with a ratchet to remove those two bolts and remove that caliper bracket. And then we can remove the disc as well. The hub is held on by four 15 millimeter nuts on the back side. Use a 15 millimeter socket, a flexible U-joint, an extension and ratchet, and remove those four bolts. And we are going to fast forward as we do that. And as you can see, you have to just kind of put the wrench in from different angles, but they come out fairly, well, not easily, but once you break them loose, they come off pretty easy. Use a hammer, and you can hit it from the back. Be careful not to damage your backing plate. A couple taps the other way and it comes out. Our vehicle does not have ABS, so there's no sensor attached, but once it starts to come out, you can reach back and disconnect your sensor if your vehicle does have ABS. I use a wire brush and just clean out the surface where the hub goes in, as well as the surface where the flange mounts on. And as you can see here, old hub, new hub from 1AAuto, exactly the same. Put the backing plate back up in place. Put your hub in. If you had ABS, you would plug the sensor back in at this point, but then get the hub in place and start the nuts on. Okay, and I'll fast forward as we tighten those up, and you want to torque them to 65 foot-pounds. Okay, reinstall the rotor. Now reinstall the bracket and start the bolts in, and then we'll tighten up the bolts and torque them between 50 and 55 foot-pounds. Now apply a little of brake or white grease just right into the slides where you're going to install the brake pads into. The pads have a little notch in them, so you want to make sure that you position your piston at the correct clock position so that it'll slide down over the pads. So we just turn the piston a little bit. Okay, now we're going to take our pads and put them into the slides. Make sure they go in correctly. They should be nice and free and movable. Okay, and make sure also, again, that you have the piston lined up so that it will go right down onto the pad. So we get the pads in place, and now we'll speed up here as we put the the caliper back on. And if you have any issue at all with that caliper going down onto the bracket, then just check your brake caliper piston, make sure it's lined up correctly. And we'll put those bolts back on and use our 14mm as well as our 19mm wrench. And you want to just tighten these up nice and snug. They should be about between 18 and 19 foot-pounds. And keep the speed up here as we put our wheel and tire back on, and just start the lug nuts on there by hand first, then tighten them preliminarily. And with the car back down on the ground now, we'll tighten the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds using a star pattern. And last but not least, put our wheel cover on there, and then put the caps on carefully, only using hand power to tighten those caps up. And last but certainly not least, make sure you pump up the brakes, get a nice firm pedal before road testing the vehicle. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.oneaauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.